Hi, I'm Craig Rowland, founder of Sandfly Security. In today's video, I'm going to demonstrate how a malicious process can hide in the Linux RAM disk to avoid detection. It's a very common tactic and technique being used by malware, so I think you're going to find it enjoyable. Basically, what it is every Linux system is going to have what's called a RAM disk. A RAM disk is essentially a disk, but operates in the random access memory of the computer. This makes it very fast, meaning that you can get to the information quickly, but it also means if the computer were to shut down a reboot, all the information is lost because it's part of the RAM. It's not written to the hard disk. Now, for a piece of malware, this is actually advantageous for a couple things. First of all, most people never look at the RAM disk. In fact, a lot of you might not even know it existed until I just told you about it. The second thing is that if the system were to reboot, evidence that the malware was there is actually destroyed. So this is actually to the advantage of the malware, because if they don't have a mechanism to maintain persistence, or they don't want a mechanism to maintain persistence, they could put their stuff in the RAM disk and know if that system gets rebooted, like let's say during an investigation or an admin does something kind of goofy because they don't know what's going on, the evidence that they were there suddenly vanishes and goes up in smoke. So this is a tactic that's used by a lot of malware because it also helps avoid antivirus detection. A lot of AV products may not scan the RAM disk, and it also avoids traditional file integrity monitoring, which again may not be checking the RAM disk area. So I'm going to go over here to our browser. We're going to start in the Sandfly user interface. Now, Sandfly is an agentless endpoint detection response product on Linux. We can monitor Linux without deploying endpoint agents, and we look for a lot of this kind of malicious activity. On this system here, what we did is we scanned our host called Sandfly Victim, and we found 3 alerts. So we found a combination of alerts because they tend to all blend together into the same type of attack. In this case here, the first thing we found was that a file binary called dev.shmt was found on this system. And what we're saying here is that the file dev.shmt was found under dev.hm, and it's a Linux executable. This is a suspicious location for an executable file on a standard Linux system. Indeed it is. There is no legitimate reason why a Linux executable should be running from the RAM disk. There's no real legitimate programmatic reason why someone would want to load it there, because again, it's volatile. If the system reboots, if you installed software there, it instantly disappears. But to the attacker, this is a great place again for them to shove it. So we found an executable here, and we're just saying this file has been found in this area and we think it's suspicious. The second thing we found on this system is that we had a process here with a listening network port. So again, we found a process name that's just called itself T, which again is very odd. And it has this process ID, and it has a listening TCP port. So basically what we're saying is someone has started a server that's running from the RAM disk. So now the level of suspicion is now going, in my mind, way, way up. We see the process name here. We see the command line. We see the process command itself. I can see the full process path going to the RAM disk over here. The raw result data about this process shows us everything about the command line arguments, when it was created, who created it. I can see the open file descriptors it has on it, the process environment information, and I can also see the network ports down here under the TC ports listening. I see something on port 4444. I see it's in a listening state. So everything about this process running from a RAM disk with a binary there and a listening network port is telling me this thing's very odd. The last alert's essentially identical. Essentially what we're saying here is that we've simply found a process of any type running from the RAM disk. Again, very suspicious activity, and again, it's that process T. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back over to my terminal here, and we're going to have a little poke around at this. So a couple things here to understand. We know that process is in dev.hm. I'm going to list it here, and sure enough, here I see it's called T. I can get file information about it. I can get SHA-1 some information about that T process. What I would probably want to do at this point is I would want to take that binary that's sitting here and pull it off the system for safekeeping, just again, in case it destroys itself through whatever mechanism. But we know that this process is up to no good. I'm going to do PSAUX here, and then we're going to see our process here. I see it over here. It's 14446. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and then many systems have a command called lsof. So I'm going to do here, let me clear the screen, make it easier for you to read. lsof-p, I'm going to put down my process ID, and we're going to list it here. So what we're going to show is lsof is short for list open files. It's going to show me everything about it. Current working directory, dev.hm, we know that. We see also that the full path that it's working in. These are the libraries it has open, which might reveal more information. And finally, down here, we see that it's in a listening state on this network port. And this is one way to do it. Another way to do a process investigation, which we covered in some of our other videos, is to go to the process directory. So /proc and then the PID. Again, listing here on this directory, we see information here, again, current working directory, the process executable. We can look at the environment variables, file descriptors, and things like that. A lot of this information is already provided for you inside the Sandfly UI, but for those of you who aren't running Sandfly, this is a way for you to do command line forensics on that process as well. So those are a few quick tips and tactics about processes running out of the RAM disk on Linux. You don't want to see it. There's really is no legitimate reason to do it. If you do see a legitimate program running from dev.shm, I would question very highly the development practices of why they're doing that. It's a very bad idea. But for malware, they love going to the place. So if you see it on your systems, going to be bad news. Thanks again for watching the video. Please check out our other videos on short, quick Linux forensics and intrusion detection topics. I'm Craig Rowland from Sandfly Security. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please come back again, and bye.